Panzer IV crews thought the Sherman was a joke long before they ever heard the name Firefly. To them, the American-built tank was just another boxy silhouette on the horizon, another target. Its armor was thinner, its gun was shorter. Its reputation in German barracks and bunkers was the stuff of cynical humor. Sherman, they would say. Like a Zippo lighter, one shot. And it lights right up. That was what Feldwebel Karl Ritter believed as he leaned against the warm steel of his Panzer IV, smoking a cigarette and watching the French countryside burn orange in the late evening light. It was June 1944, a few weeks after the Allied landings in Normandy, and the once unshakable Wehrmacht was slowly being pushed back through hedgerows and fields they had never expected to defend. Karl had survived Africa and the Eastern Front. He had watched T-34 swarm like metal hornets, had traded shots with British crusaders on the open desert sand. None of it had frightened him the way these new Allied offensives did. Not because of their tanks, but because of their sheer grinding persistence. Still, when it came to the Sherman, he wasn't worried. Earlier that day, his crew had knocked out 2 of them in quick succession. "It's always the same," his gunner Otto had laughed, running his hand along the long barrel of their 75mm gun. "They show us their side armor like they want to die faster." Karl had chuckled, but he'd also noticed something. These enemy tanks kept coming. Every time they destroyed one, 2 more seemed to appear. It was like fighting an enemy that could grow back its limbs in real time. Still, in the quiet moments, the old confidence returned. German engineering, German training, German discipline. That was what he trusted. On the other side of the hedgerows, a British tank crew moved just as carefully, watching the same fields, the same lines of trees, but with a very different feeling. Sergeant Tom Ellison sat in the commander's seat of a Sherman Firefly, his head and shoulders rising above the open hatch, binoculars pressed to his eyes. His tank, with its absurdly long 17-pounder gun, looked almost ungainly compared to the stubby original Sherman design. Soldiers joked that if you turned too fast, you'd knock out your own infantry. But Tom knew what that gun could do. He'd seen the trials. He'd watched armor plate that once laughed at their shells suddenly shatter under the impact of an armor piercing round beside him. In the gunner's seat sat Corporal Alfie Baker, a quiet man whose calm under fire made him seem almost detached from reality. He loved the Firefly like it was a living thing. He knew the sound of the breech closing, the recoil, the smell of the burnt propellant. He also knew what their targets were. Tigers, Panzers, whatever they send, Alfie muttered, half to himself, half to the steel around him. "We can kill them now." Tom lowered his binoculars and looked at the long barrel stretching out in front of them, its muzzle brake just visible over the hedge. "Just remember," he said, "we see them first, or we're dead. Firefly or not." Their Firefly sat hull down behind a thick Norman hedgerow, the engine idling low, almost purring. The rest of their troop, standard 75mm Shermans, had moved forward slightly, more visible, inviting attention. It was deliberate. The Firefly was the hidden stinger. The standard Shermans could keep the enemy interested. The Firefly would kill. In the late afternoon haze, German reconnaissance reported enemy armor pushing toward a crossroads near a small French village. The order filtered down to Karl's unit: hold the line. Panzer IV moved up, engines growling, treads grinding over dirt and stone. Dust settled on uniforms and faces. Karl climbed into his tank, slid into the commander's cupola, and rotated it to scan the horizon through his periscope. "Crew ready?" "Ready," Otto called from the gunner's seat. Hans, the loader, thumped the side of a shell crate. "Plenty of gifts for Tommy," he said. The driver, Eric, revved the engine gently. Waiting, the radio crackled with clipped, controlled voices. Somewhere behind them, artillery thundered. Karl squinted against the lowering sun as they approached the hedgerow country that the Allies now used like a shield. Field, hedges, sunken lanes. It was a place built to ambush tanks, but German crews had learned quickly. Hug the edges, never silhouette yourself. Listen for engines you couldn't see. On the British side, Tom listened too. Through the open hatch came the distant thrum of engines slightly higher pitched than the Shermans. A different rhythm. German. "Alfie, be ready," Tom said quietly. "They're coming." Alfie already had his eye to the sight. hand resting on the elevation gear, foot poised for the trigger. Loaded with APCBC, came the loader's voice, Private Calloway, the youngest of the crew. 17-pounder ready. Good, Tom answered. Let's give Jerry a surprise if he peeks his nose out. Minutes dragged. Somewhere nearby, an Allied artillery battery sent shells screaming overhead. The ground shook. Birds burst from trees. Carl's Panzer rocked slightly as a closer explosion showered dust over them. Forward, slow, Carl ordered. Stay close to the hedge. Eric eased the tank ahead. Through his periscope, Carl saw flashes of olive drab, a Sherman at the far end of a field, angled, possibly not seeing them yet. Target, 11 o'clock. Carl snapped. Sherman, 300 meters. Otto, give him something to remember us by. Otto grinned, lined up his sight, and breathed out. On the way. The roar of the 75mm cannon filled the cramped interior. The shell flew, a heartbeat of silence, and then a flash as the Sherman's side armor erupted in sparks and flame. The tank lurched, smoke billowing from its hatches. Hit, hands shouted, pumping a fist, target destroyed. Carl allowed himself a small smile. See, they're not gods, he said. They bleed and burn like everything else. But Tom saw the plume of smoke rise in the distance and felt his stomach tighten. That had been one of theirs. He couldn't think about who, couldn't think about the names. He spoke instead. We've got a live one out there, he said. Sounded like a high-velocity gun. Likely a Panzer IV or Panther. They've seen our boys. He pressed his binoculars to his face again, scanning carefully over the top of the hedgerow. The field beyond was a patchwork of green and gold, broken by another thick hedgeline. For a moment he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved, a shape slightly darker than the bushes behind it, a turret, turning too slowly to be natural foliage. There, Tom whispered, hedge break, left of the oak. Panzer, by the look of it. Inside the Firefly, Alfie adjusted his aim with small, precise movements. The long gun traversed slightly. Range? Alfie asked. 600, give or take, Tom replied, estimating off experience and instinct. He's angled toward the others. Doesn't know we're here. Alfie settled his cheek into the sight. In his crosshairs, the German tank edged forward, its side armor briefly exposed. Steady, Tom murmured. Wait until he shows a bit more. Carl's Panzer rolled another few meters forward, lining up on a second Sherman that had appeared near the burning wreck of the first. Another one, same heading, he ordered. Otto ready. Got him, Otto said. As he adjusted the gun, he never saw the Firefly, never knew the eyes that watched him from the hedge, the gun that had been waiting. Alfie felt his world narrow to a single point. His breathing slowed. He hardly heard the Firefly's engine, the creak of its suspension, the distant artillery. There was just the crosshair, the gray-green plate of the Panzer's turret ring. On target, Alfie said quietly. Fire, Tom ordered. The Firefly barked. The 17-pounder recoiled violently, the whole tank rocking back. The shell flew faster than the German armor was ever designed to withstand. It struck the Panzer IV just below the turret, punching through like paper. Inside, the world became fire. Otto never finished his curse. Hans never loaded the next shell. Heat and light blasted through the cramped space. And then there was nothing but blackness and the deafening roar of the explosion. From the outside, it was just another flash. Another plume of black smoke, curling into the sky. The rest of Carl's company watched in stunned silence. One moment he'd been invincible, the battered veteran who had cheated death across continents. The next, his tank was a burning tomb. Where did that shot come from? Someone shouted over the radio. We only saw Shermans. Shermans can't do that at that range. In their confusion, they missed the long barrel among the hedges, the subtle difference in silhouette. To them, all Shermans looked the same. That mistake would cost them more than one crew. Tom's heart hammered. He'd seen tanks die before, but there was always a horrible finality when the target went up instantly. He knew what that meant. He knew there'd been men inside, joking moments before, trusting their armor just as he trusted his. He swallowed hard. Good hit, he said quietly, because it was the job. You had to say it. Alfie, find the next one. That first clash was only the beginning. Word spread among the British crews. The Firefly worked. It could kill panthers and tigers at ranges where the standard Shermans just scratched paint. But for the German crews, rumors spread of a new gun of Shermans that weren't like the others. They had longer teeth. They bit back. A week later, in another patch of Normandy countryside, another German crew sat inside a Tiger I, the heavy metal monster whose very name had once sent Allied crews into panic. Oberleutnant Marcus Voss ran a hand along the interior of his turret, feeling the reassuring thickness of the armor around him. He had always trusted the Tiger. Its 88mm gun outranged almost everything. Its armor shrugged off most enemy shells. It was slow, yes, and temperamental, but on open ground it was king. Or at least it had been. Lately, he had heard troubling stories over shared cigarettes and hurried meals. A Sherman knocked out a Tiger at long range, someone claimed. Impossible, another insisted. Must have been a fluke or a misidentified gun. The stories repeated, twisted by fear and bravado. But the pattern was there. Tigers burning from hits they never thought possible. Today, Marcus would see for himself. His unit was moved to reinforce a sector pressing up against a British advance. His Tiger led a small group of Panzer IVs, metal beasts, trundling through fields that had once belonged to farmers now hiding in their cellars. He peered through his optics, scanning for the rounded turrets he knew so well. Across the fields, Tom's Firefly lay in another concealed position, hull down behind a stone wall this time, its barrel just peeking over. They had learned the German habits, where they liked to deploy, how they used the ground. Tom had briefed his crew before they moved into positions. "We're not going toe-to-toe with a Tiger," he'd said. "We don't brawl. That's suicide. We sit, we wait, and we hit them before they even know we're here. Understand?" "Yes, Sarge," came the chorus inside, though Calloway had swallowed nervously. Everyone knew the Tiger stories, how shells just bounced off, how some crews fired and couldn't kill it. But everyone also knew what the Firefly's gun could do if they got the shot. The weight was unbearable. Hours felt like days. Heat built inside the tank. Sweat-soaked uniforms. Every creak sounded like approaching treads. Then, at last, Tom heard it. A deeper, heavier engine note, distinct from the Panzer IVs, like a growl under the earth. "That's a Tiger," he said softly. Any romanticism drained from his voice. This was serious. "Alfie, be ready. This is what they built this beast for." Slowly, the German tanks appeared in the distance. One by one, the Tiger leading, flanked by two Panzer IVs, with another trailing slightly behind. Marcus scanned ahead, spotting what looked like two Shermans moving cautiously along a hedgerow. "There," he told his gunner. "Shermans, 800 meters. We take the lead 1-1 shot." In his mind, it was still a familiar equation. Tiger versus Sherman, a duel he believed he knew the ending to. But there was a variable he hadn't accounted for. The Sherman he didn't see. While the ordinary Shermans moved just enough to be seen, drawing his eye, Tom's Firefly stayed still, camouflaged, quiet, waiting for the perfect angle. "Range?" Alfie asked, eye pressed to the sight. 900, Tom replied. "He's angling toward our boys. Don't rush the shot. We'll only get one before he sees us." Marcus's Tiger fired first. The 88 barked, and the lead Sherman exploded in a cloud of smoke and flame, its turret lifting slightly before slamming back down. The second Sherman reversed frantically, trying to break line of sight. Cheers went up inside the Tiger. It was just like old times for a heartbeat. Then Tom saw the Tiger pause, its turret beginning to rotate. "Now, Alfie," he whispered, "before he finds us." Alfie adjusted for range, felt the familiar weight of adrenaline mixed with training. He knew he was about to pit British steel and his own skill, a gent one of Fargate. It struck the Tidy's glacis plate in a oblique angle. No penetration. Marnia's hearts. "Not by a Shermanan, find the shooter," he barked. "Bon, it's not the one we hit. There another outside. The Firefly's loader. There so are the Stotter." "Enbon, come on," Calloway muttered, ramming the shell home. "Enbon Bowden," Alfie corrected, feeling the tension wrap around his chest. Through his sight, the Tiger's turret was indeed Swedburntast. Through his sight, the Tigerow, spotting what looked like a fit. Mosh West. The barrel was longer, stretching out. That can to be Byron. The second shot slammed into the tire's turret ring, the vulnerable spot where even its thick armor could be computerized. The 17-pounder, as shell punched through, detonated inside the fighter, seemed to shudder, then belch flame from its hatches. Smoke poured out, thick and black, then belch flame from its hatches. Smoke poured out, thick and black. A Sherman, at nearly 1,000 meters, had just killed a tiger. For a long moment, no one moved. Radios crackled with half-formed words. Dispatch killed a tiger. For a long moment, no one moved. He didn't have it in him, he just let out. Inside the Firefly, the men stared in stunned silence. They had just done what so many had told them was impossible. Calloway, Firefly, the men stared in stunned silence. Then, we killed a tiger. Alfie leaned back from the sight, hands trembling, the delayed shock catching up with him. Yeah, he said softly. The legend of the Firefly grew. Some stories exaggerated, claiming mile-long shots, or emirses. The legend of the Firefly grew mocked the Shirth, the days wormens are equus. Some have a long gun, take them seriously. Those are the ones that can kill you before you even know they are there. The airway to wary resect, take them seriously. Those are the ones that can kill you before you even know they are there. The airway to wary respect. Their tanks were still Shermaned, to a lucky shot from a Panzer, to a lucky shot from a Panzer or Tiger. Their tanks were still Shermans under Maith, but they also knew something else. One evening, after a long day of fighting, that had seen their troop reduced, but victorious, Tom climbed down from his Firefly and said Hickian's meter pooled. Alfie joined him, lighting a serious. Bro, they steady. Do you ever think about them, Alfie? Asked Finewer. Hookah. They thought they were untouching sky. I try not to, he said. If I do, I start wondering if some are out there. I try not to, he said. All's fuzz. Make, he said, but for me, it is not about beating their metal. It about making sure our infantry can muddle. Making not about beating their metal. If I have to kill one big beast to save 100 of ours, he'd take the shot every time. He gave the long barrel of the Firefly a gentle pat. The sack, he added, trying to lighten the mood. If we did have this ugly fight, it was a ruthless dance, a constant race to see who could see who genuine. There were no knees demi. But Germans found it impossible to erase the evidence of what they had done there in Jovet tides. Bertea, Braviches, Braid and Porate, Pa. The Germans found it impossible, the first time. Bray's Fireflyer, Pyre. Bray, but it marked a turning point. In the hidden war inside the war. Tum do but turning point. In the hidden war inside the war. Do duel, but you bet. They had laughed and impossible to Pori. The Germans found it impossible to erase the evidence of what they had done there. In some sheds, they had laughed and jeered, with its long, ungainly gun, and its unassuming weighty way, and taught they knew, in that moment,